Hello, everyone. My name is Ksenia Kemova. I have been teaching English for more than 15 years. I'm also a linguist, a researcher, and a pianist. My teaching experience has convinced me that soft skills are essential in learning, and learning experiences are more meaningful if developing soft skills is not ignored. So today, I will talk about teaching grammar to promote soft skills. Well, grammar is hard, isn't it? Most teachers would agree with me that at least at times, grammar could be hard. Grammar is a hard skill in all meanings of the word. Hard skills are language skills, computer skills, management skills, data analysis skills, and many other job-related skills.
Хотите постоянно развиваться в преподавании иностранных языков? Школа Дмитрия Никитина проводит образовательные тренинги, конференции и курсы для преподавателей. Подробности о событиях можно узнать по ссылке в описании.
But is everything about grammar hard? Grammar is the hard backbone of language, but it's not something that forces or limits you. In my teaching philosophy, I stick to the idea and I keep telling my students that grammar is our freedom and power. It's an opportunity to communicate a precise idea. According to Scott Thornbury, the purpose of grammar seems to be to allow for greater subtlety of meaning than a merely lexical system can cater for. So grammar is knowing how thinking in another language works. This is an intellectual skill crucial for developing critical thinking. On the other hand, mastering the system of thinking and acquiring freedom is not possible without developing soft skills related to critical thinking and flexibility. So it looks like grammar and soft skills are interdependent. And a grammar lesson becomes a productive environment where soft skills are developed. Other names for soft skills are transferable skills, personal skills, people skills, interpersonal skills, and essential skills. So these are abilities that describe how you work and interact with other people. So let us see which soft or transferable or personal skills are most relevant now, and which of them could be developed in a grammar lesson. So this is a list of top soft skills of top performers, and the skills are responsibility, flexibility, working with complex information, emotional intelligence, critical thinking or higher order thinking, communication skills, time management, leadership, problem solving, self-direction, curiosity, and others. Today, I will talk about the top 6 soft skills, starting with responsibility and finishing off by talking about critical thinking, developing critical thinking with the help of Bloom's taxonomy, and communication skills, where I will discuss asking effective questions. Let's get started. Responsibility. If grammar is freedom, it is responsibility that comes with freedom. This is responsibility for avoiding ambiguity and showing things in the entirety of their characteristics. Being responsible leads to effective communication, and it is my responsibility as a teacher to show what might happen if some of the characteristics are ignored or not shown. Teaching this kind of responsibility comes in the approach to error correction. What I do is the following. While talking to students, for example, at the beginning of the lesson, when I hear a mistake, I express genuine surprise about what I have heard and show the lack of understanding if something was not clear. Who did what? When? Sorry, I didn't understand. He what? For example, a student was talking about her family and she says, my sister wear black. So I react, oh, one of your sisters or all of your sisters, she has 3, she becomes more aware and more responsible for her wording and corrects the sentence. It turns out that only one sister has this color preference. So these are known as clarification requests, and that is a friendly and natural way of signaling a problem and a mistake in communication. So it's worth making it part of routine communication with students. In writing, I teach responsibility just by pointing the number of mistakes per line, sentence, or paragraph. So it would look like this, and it works especially well when it comes to preparing for exam writing, such as CAE, IELTS, or the Russian state exam writing. I would advise to encourage peer revision whenever possible in writing. Students could correct each other's essays or even exercises. Apart from responsibilities, useful phrases for giving advice or suggestions could be taught. These include, oh, why do you put this verb in? Or why don't you put a comma here? If I were you, I would start a new paragraph, and so on. So students practice a lot of things together: writing, politeness, communication, and responsibility, and of course, grammar. Another way to integrate responsibility and encourage self-direction is to work with checklists. To be more exact, to create checklists. I find them especially effective for exam preparation again, and I will talk about an example from my experience. At the lesson with a student, we analyze the grammar of the essay, and seeing that she made the same type of mistakes again, I asked her to create a checklist focusing on her common problems. The example of what she created is on the screen. She asked herself a number of questions about her common problems. It is not a perfect checklist, but the next time she used it, it worked. She didn't make a single mistake related to the topics she focused on. A great activity encouraging responsibility and communication, so 2 soft skills together, is suggested by Scott Thornberry in the book How to Teach Grammar. This is a jigsaw activity. The class is divided into 3 groups with 3-4 students in a group, and the students are supposed to do an exercise on the use of articles, just a gapped story. The teacher gives each group a different grammar summary about 1 type of article: definite, indefinite, and 0. 3 groups, 3 summaries. The teacher asks the students to study their grammar summary and to use it to help them complete the exercise or working as a group. Then the teacher regroups the students so that there are holders of different summaries together, And the students are encouraged to explain their grammar intonation and do the task through collaboration and the exchange of information. In this case, the jigsaw principle is used for grammar information, but it could work well for many other topics.
Хотите постоянно развиваться в преподавании иностранных языков? Школа Дмитрия Никитина проводит образовательные тренинги, конференции и курсы для преподавателей. Подробности о событиях можно узнать по ссылке в описании.
The next soft skill I'm talking about today is flexibility. Very often I consult young teachers who seem to believe in grammar rules like a religion. But I always tell them, take rules with a pinch of salt, be flexible about the rules, and teach this flexibility to students. Well, an important disclaimer, I don't suggest breaking grammar rules and being flexible in this criminal way. To be flexible in grammar and in life means at least two things. That is to keep an open mind to the different options that you have to communicate your message, and to be aware of the changes that are constantly happening in language, in the grammar of a language. In practical terms, we should teach not only how the rules work, but also how the rules don't work. The question I ask my students after learning a rule, is there anything that you think might not work for this rule or piece of theory from the textbook? Well, very often my students guess. They are already suspicious. So we discuss the question, and next we Googlish it. Originally created as a video pronunciation dictionary, Googlish.com provides meaningful context that helps English students to understand how oral English is used and works in real life. So Googlish is about exposing the students to the imperfections of language and grammar. With this tool, the students become more active, flexible, and self-directed learners. Language constantly evolves and changes. A recent trend in grammar is the singular use of they is. We review the topic of pronouns and analyze the online examples from Googlish and decide if this is language evolving or this is a mistake. And like in the previous jigsaw activity, students communicate about a complex topic. So this is communication about grammar, combining several soft skills together. With the help of Googlish, we can see how real people in life are seeing or are wanting to do something. They have dinner, but they organize a dinner, and their family is happy, or their family are happy. So we can see all of this with Googlish. From my experience, the following topics require some special flexibility. They require understanding how different options work, and that there are different options. So these are verbs, as the textbook says, not used in the continuous form, but we see that they are used. Then reported speech, which heavily depends on the context, and articles and subject-verb agreement like none is, none are, family is, family are, or the recent trend we've mentioned, they is. The next soft skill we're talking about today is working with complex information. Grammar very often means dealing with huge blocks of information. And in many grammar topics, we deal with lists of forms, functions, structures, exceptions. The most common topics with lists are on the screen now. But I always invite my students to question the necessity of learning a list of things, a given list of things. The principle we stick to is that you have to learn unless you find the principle of classifying it. So I don't give my students the ready-made lists or ready-made classifications from the textbook. Instead, I offer them a mixed list of forms, of verbs, whatever, and we work on figuring out the pattern or the principle for classification together. For example, you can see a mixed list of verbs taking complex object. So I tell my students that we need to identify 4 groups of verbs within the list. And they do their best to suggest some way of classifying them. In this way, they remember the information and they can use it. Using lists also works with low levels. So, for example, I create mixed lists or with prepositions of time, like at, in, and on, and my students figure out the principle, which preposition works with which idea. Let's talk now about the interaction of grammar and another soft skill, which is emotional intelligence. Understanding the emotions of a conversation partner, adequate interpretation of the attitude and feelings and hidden meanings is an integral part of communicative competence. And the students who are already flexible, so they see different options, are more likely to notice that these different options very often come with a new emotional coloring. And actually, the emotional range that grammar can convey is rather impressive. So some of the grammar emotions are on the screen now. So it looks like we shouldn't ignore this teaching opportunity in a grammar lesson to raise the students' awareness of emotions. Not only do we learn a grammar structure, but we also identify an emotion and find a word for it. The simplest thing we can do to increase emotional intelligence is to name emotions. This might seem like a very simple approach, but it's very powerful. We may think that students are already familiar with naming emotions, but it turns out that very often they are limited in vocabulary of emotions or understanding the emotions. When identifying the emotions, it helps to contrast them. So in the activities, we find 2 contrasting statements and we ask 2 questions. Which statement is neutral and which statement is more emotional? And which emotion is that? Now, by way of example, let's talk about some contrasting statements. Have you translated the article yet? Have you translated the article already? So which statement is neutral and which is more emotional? The question with yet looks like neutral. The emotion in the second sentence is that of surprise and disbelief. Like, wow, yeah, have you translated the article already? Oh, we're surprised. Another example. It's time to clean the windows. It's time we cleaned the windows. The first sentence again is neutral, the sentence with the infinitive. The second sentence expresses dissatisfaction, discontent that cleaning hasn't been done yet. And finally, two more contrasting statements. Must you wear those dirty jeans? And do you have to wear a tie at work? The first question definitely sounds more emotional. Do you really like it this way? Well, I disapprove. That's what the first question sounds like. That's disapproval. And the second question is more neutral and sounds like a request for information. Now, let's talk about critical thinking and its interaction with grammar. The main question here is there any way to combine doing exercises and developing critical thinking? The answer is yes. And it's not always about inventing super new activities or something really original, but rather about revealing what the existing exercises, the existing content in the textbook can give us in terms of critical thinking. Traditional worksheets or grammar activities never move students towards creating, or very seldom do so. But we want our students to create and to synthesize. So we have to think a little bit beyond the grammar worksheet. Luckily, we can achieve those higher order thinking skills with the help of Bloom's taxonomy, to be sure that we are addressing various types of cognitive processes in our tasks. So the taxonomy is a great tool showing how an exercise, a traditional exercise, could be upgraded or extended. This is especially relevant for advanced grammar topics, since there are very few communicative activities for them in the textbooks. So what we do is rely on the verbs for all the 6 levels of the taxonomy, and we use the verbs to formulate the task or to improve, upgrade the existing tasks for exercises in the textbook. So the tasks become more meaningful and inviting students to think. What's more, those verbs are universal and can be used virtually for any topic and any grammar topic as well. Let us see how we can use verbs of the taxonomy to create critical thinking tasks around a typical exercise from the textbook. So the topic of the exercise is wish structures. I will skip the first 2 levels of the taxonomy, which are knowledge and comprehension or understanding, because these are the types of activities we normally find in the textbook. So we start with level 3, which is application. And we use the exercise as an opportunity to develop higher order thinking skills. What we do is extend the task using the formula, do the exercise, like do the task of the exercise, and we give some more instruction. So based on the taxonomy, on this level of application, we can ask the students to do the exercise and change the sentences from the present to the past. do the exercise and rewrite all the sentences or some of the sentences in other words, or do the exercise and rewrite the ideas about your experience. Changing the structures is most valuable practice. Manipulating the structures empowers students to write as they see that they can choose, they can transform, experiment. So students start to apply grammar to their own writing. They see how grammar flows into other areas. So they see that grammar is not just about learning a set of rules, but it's about freedom and power. The same scheme works for the next level of the taxonomy, which is analysis. So we do the exercise and, for example, discuss the answers in pairs. Do the exercise and ask to explain the choice. Or do the exercise and record recommendations for other students, what they should pay attention to in order to do the exercise effectively. Practicing with English is also of analytical nature, and it is again a good opportunity to see how language is changing and to discuss it. The top levels, level 5 and 6, level 6 are about creating things. So on the 5th level, which is about synthesis, the students do the exercise and use some of the phrases as a basis for a dialogue or story. They do the exercise and convert it to a different task type. This is a task that my students really enjoy. And my favorite is the last one on the slide. Do the exercise and create an answer key with commentaries for a test on the topic. And sometimes we do this instead of the test itself. On the top level, which is evaluation, the following task options are possible. Do the exercise and hold a survey. What habits annoy your group mates most? Do the exercise and predict to what extent the ideas are true for your partner. So I have shown just a few ways of creating more tasks for one and the same I wish exercise. The best thing about the taxonomy and about these task options is that they could be transferred to any other grammar exercise on a different topic. And you can build a lesson based on the 6 levels of the taxonomy, or you can build a module or a whole course. As you move through Bloom's taxonomy while teaching grammar, you will find your groove. Now, moving to the last block of my talk, communication skills. And here I'm talking about asking effective questions. Asking questions is a soft skill indeed. It's part of communicative competence. At the same time, it's a grammar topic. And we teach how to ask grammatically correct questions, but not always how to make effective questions. So the students are more likely to know what a question to the subject is, rather than be aware of the difference between open-ended and closed questions, thick and thin questions. So although the Russian state exam requires the skill of asking direct questions, speaking part 2 of ЕГЭ, for example, in real life, it is indirect questions that we mostly need to sound polite. Since asking questions is a fundamental skill, I encourage my students to ask questions throughout the lesson and beyond. This could take different forms. Asking questions as a warm-up. And the activity is called What's the Question? So we can use this teaching idea to get students' brains warmed up. This is a super simple way to encourage students to come up with questions. We write an answer on the whiteboard, on the online board, and ask students to write possible questions for this answer. It's fun and usually puts the students in a good mood. While teaching grammar, we often use a short piece of text or story to introduce a certain topic. But reading could be more meaningful if students are encouraged to ask questions before, during, and after reading. Asking questions before reading a story will provide students with motivation, with a purpose for reading. As they read, they will try to find answers to the questions that they have asked themselves. So, for example, before reading, I encourage my students to ask questions like, I wonder if this story is about this. I wonder if I learn about that. So we do that orally, sometimes in writing. And the students could also ask a question to themselves. And I always demonstrated showing how I read texts, what questions I ask myself. Like, what do I already know about the topic? Like, what is the basis for my reading? During reading, we could practice another type of questions. For example, after reading a paragraph, we could stop and ask questions in the middle of the way, of our way through the story. This would also sustain motivation and make reading more structured. So we could ask questions about the characters and events, like, why is that happening? Why did he or she do that? What would happen if? How come? How did that happen? Or questioning the author's intent. Why did the author write this? Or making predictions. Well, I wonder if something will happen. So it really helps to keep the students active and to use questions for a practical purpose. After reading, we could also ask questions. So I'm still wondering if something happened. Big questions with why and how, or thin questions about specific facts like what, where, and when. And also questions about the overall idea. So how were my questions answered? Which questions were unanswered? How can I answer them? So questions become part of a student's thinking and of a student's approach to written information.
Хотите постоянно развиваться в преподавании иностранных языков? Школа Дмитрия Никитина проводит образовательные тренинги, конференции и курсы для преподавателей. Подробности о событиях можно узнать по ссылке в описании.
Questions could be made part of homework. For example, an assignment that calls for student creation of 5 questions about a homework or class reading or video. So you might have them write down 3 closed questions and 2 open-ended questions, meaning that they don't know the answers for these open-ended questions. And in class, the students exchange the questions and have a meaningful discussion. My students are familiar with CCQs, concept checking questions, so they constantly hear them from me, and sometimes I take risks and ask them to come up with their own CCQs. So on the slide, you can see what they produce. So the topic was the present continuous. And the phrase, they're painting that building. The last but not the least is that special attention should be paid to practicing indirect questions in situations requiring politeness. The topic of polite requests is studied for the first time on A2 level. However, it's worth recycling the material on higher levels too, so even higher level students run into problems when asking questions. And this soft skills requires constant polishing. The problem is not only the complexity of the mechanics of asking a question, but also the variety of situations where polite questions are needed. So special attention should be paid to such questions as, can you possibly drive me? Or you wouldn't mind picking me up later, would you? I was wondering if it would be possible to. From time to time, I devote a lesson to written communication where we focus on asking questions, an indispensable skill today. So what we teachers should do is promote the value of curiosity, creating the atmosphere where students feel free to ask questions. Asking students what kinds of questions do you have instead of do you have questions can send the clear signal that the torch, that responsibility has been passed to the students. And my favorite question is, what idea or what questions made you reflect the most today? So this is the question I'm asking you now. And if you feel that you have an idea or a question that you would like to ask, you are most welcome to contact me in any social media that you can see on the slide. Thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.